So, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and if I don't see you, good night. Isn't that from the Truman Show? So, I hope you guys are doing well. Let's begin this Q&A. Who would like to start?
I'll start, Delson.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, mine's a question about radiating metta.
Yes.
Should it be a single sort of decision of will to do that, and then one sits observing it happening, or is it a continuous intention?
Yeah, it's the former. So you have the intention of sending the metta in one direction, and you're observing how that metta is stretching out in that direction and then in all directions whenever that happens. So that would be the way to do it. Because if you try to just stay with the intention of sending out metta constantly, it could cause tension. It could cause your mind to become actually more constricted because it's making too much of an effort. So it's best to set the intention and then observe how the metta is moving in that direction, that one direction.
And then I have a second question, which is to do
Yeah.
with, I've noticed that insights and sort of shifts to more subtle states sort of happen unexpectedly.
Yeah.
Just seemingly without and then what I notice afterwards is that my mind tries to repeat that. So the next sitting, it looks for a pattern, or it's trying to figure it out. How did that happen before, and to apply it? And that's creating tension, that sort of
Yes.
So
So
do I just stick-sar that when I notice it, or is there another trick?
So I will tell you the nature of insight is that they come out of seemingly nowhere. I mean, that's why they're insights. They're like that eureka moment that just comes up. You can't necessarily recreate that. What happens is you take note of it and understand that here is an insight, and your mind will take that and run with it because it's new information or it's new territory, and it will start to adapt to it naturally. But if you try to recreate it, then you are going to cause restlessness in the mind because you're using too much investigation, or not only too much investigation, but I would say the ineffective use of investigation here, because the correct way of using investigation is just to really observe and notice what's happening, just discern what's going on. And you don't need to do this the whole time because it will happen naturally as well. The more you try to stay out of your own way in this meditation, the more insights that will arise, because they're not coming from you, or they're not coming from a result of you making some kind of effort to bring them up. They're coming up because the causes and conditions are right. And those causes and conditions that arise happen because you're just being present for them to be there. Your mind is being present. As long as you have the presence of mind, that is the basic level of mindfulness in regards to what's happening in the meditation, things will happen. And so whether it's an insight or it's a hindrance, if the insight distracts you away from your object, yes, you take note of it and you say, okay, that's a very interesting insight. But if it now takes you away from the object or the action of meditation, then you just stick-sar that and you come back to your object of meditation.
Great, understood.
Anybody else? Yes.
I have a question, and I hope it'll make sense because I'm not exactly sure how to ask it. I have some things that come up sometimes that are very difficult emotionally from the past. And certain times I found out working with you or other teachers that I need to break from the metta and do forgiveness in order to get the metta going more again because of this thing that keeps coming up. Other times the metta's going okay, but something difficult will come up. But then it's like, do I go to forgiveness? But then sometimes the thought of going to forgiveness feels too heavy, and it feels like maybe it'd be better to wait till there's more metta, like more equanimity, to even go into that thing. So how do I know when I need to go backwards and when I need to,
So let me clarify this for everybody, because this is something that's happened a lot before as well. And sometimes people, when I was around when Bhante was giving interviews, and I would just sit and listen to him, and he would then suggest forgiveness, you could see on their face like this sense of distraught and like, oh no, I've done something wrong. It's like a punishment. Go and do forgiveness. Let me clarify this for you guys right here, right now. Forgiveness is very powerful. Forgiveness is in itself a meditation that is, I would highly recommend it, regardless of whether you think you need it or not. It is so powerful, you have no idea. It is something that provides the ability to have compassion for your own self. The way to look at forgiveness is that it is, yes, it's remedial in the sense of, trying to open up the heart, but it can be a practice in of itself. This is what I'm saying. And forgiveness can be treated like a medication, like a medicine. If you feel like you need to go back to forgiveness, then do it, and just open up the chambers of, the heart center, and then come back to loving kindness. That's totally fine. So if your intuition guides you into wanting to do forgiveness, then do it. If you find any resistance to that forgiveness, then that's a sure sign that you need to do forgiveness. Because, it doesn't harm anyone, it doesn't harm anything, it doesn't harm your own mind. If the mind feels like it needs forgiveness or it needs to go to forgiveness, by all means, please do it. Now, coming to your particular situation. So there will be times where, there will be thoughts that come up, or situations or ideas or memories that constantly come up. But the energy of that memory can start to diminish if you're doing the 6 R's correctly. If you're actually recognizing it's there, if you're letting go, that's releasing, relaxing the tension, coming back to the smile and staying with the object, even if it's for a second or two, you're on the right track. And the memory, the energy of that memory will start to diminish. But if it's persistent to the point of creating for you this tension where you feel like you can't progress, then drop the other meditation, drop the loving kindness, and face this memory, face this, whatever it is, with forgiveness. And that starts to soften that memory. It starts to loosen up the grip that memory has on your mind. But the more you pay attention to it, the more that memory tightens its grip. So it's all a matter of where you put your attention to. It could be that there is still some lack of resolution with regard to that memory or thought or whatever it might be. And if that's the case, then do the forgiveness. But remember that your attention is what strengthens either the memory or your object of meditation. So be aware of where your attention is going and what does that attention magnetize towards. For some reason, maybe that memory is more interesting. And if it's more interesting, it's probably because there's still some emotional content to it that you need to start to let go of through forgiveness. So really simply put, I would just say, use your intuition, see what your intuition leads you to, and then go from there.
Because would it ever be cause more problem? Like if there's a memory that's coming up that's difficult and it hasn't been let go of, but it's so triggering that even to try to do forgiveness might just get you all stirred. Like if you have some nice metta going, and if you were to switch gears and focus on this thing, it's so triggering, it might just make you more reactive, and maybe it's not time yet or something. Does that make sense? Like not wanting to get
It
heavy.
makes sense to me. No, it makes sense to me, but it sounds like you have aversion towards that memory and you need to deal with the aversion to that memory. Because, triggers and things like that, yes, they're very difficult to deal with because that's why they're called triggers. But you have to be able to come to a point in your mind at some point to create a space between your mind and that trigger, so that even if that trigger comes up, you see it with equanimity. You see it with, okay, this is what it is. It doesn't have any more emotional value to it. So don't be afraid. Don't have any aversion towards having to go back to forgiveness with it. Because if that's happening, then you're not going to go anywhere with it. You're not going to move forward with with metta or compassion. It's just going to be like a, one step forwards, two steps backward kind of, because that thing is still going to be there for you having to deal with it.
Yeah. Okay.
What's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen?
Well, just spiraling down into negativity and losing all possibility of meditating at all.
That's not too bad. See, the reason why it seems so bad is because your mind is perceiving it that way. The mind, it starts to look at it and says, oh, this is very challenging and I'm going to spiral and it's going to be really bad. How do you know? Yeah, maybe you've had it happen before, but now you have the tools, and maybe you failed once, maybe you failed a couple of times, maybe you failed a dozen times. No big deal. If you start to just look at that and let go of putting so much value to it in the form of, if I face this is what's going to happen, then it is going to happen because your attention to it is in that way. But if you look at it and say, okay, it's just this. All right, this is something I just need to deal with, and I'm going to use my equanimity. I'm going to use forgiveness. The problem starts to shrink. At least the perspective on the problem starts to shrink, so that you don't get so worried and reactive about it. So change the perspective of it and just say that it's something ginormous that I can't deal with, to, okay, this is something I have to deal with, but I'm going to be okay. I'm going to use forgiveness. I'm going to start to let go of it.
Okay. I'll give it a try. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Well, I can add on one more thing if no one else has anything yet. What's the best way to generate like when you generate the feeling of metta, you can, if you need to, if you're stalling, you can bring up an image or a thought and you get that feeling going again. How do you do that with forgiveness? I don't really remember what the best way is to generate
It's a statement. It's a statement. I
Just the
mean, you
statement
just
of the word.
basically, you just say, I forgive myself for not understanding a few times, and then you just wait. And stuff will come up, and then you just say, I forgive myself for
So you're
not
not
understanding.
trying to, oh, sorry, you're not
Yeah,
trying
go
to
ahead.
generate a feeling or a vibe like you are with the metta. It's just the words. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, the forgiveness is actually allowing you to release at a very deep level. So more than actually feeling anything, it's more about feeling lighter. If you want to bring up like a experience, if you're successfully forgiving something, it's making your mind feel lighter. Some people feel just relief. If you feel relieved from it, if you feel like you've let go, if you feel like you can accept whatever has happened to some degree, then you're on the right track with forgiveness.
But you don't need to try and create that feeling on the front end like you would with metta. Okay.
No.
Just kind of forgot. Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Hey, it's not about practice, but I'm curious, like, since you started on this path, like, has your like everyday perception, has there been a change in like how you perceive everyday reality, like space and objects and other people and such?
yes. Colors are much sharper, more vivid. And senses in general are much sharper because there's a lot more awareness in whatever's going on. I would say the ability to grasp information is much faster. Uh, obviously, there's no reactivity to situations in the sense of like taking things personally. So somebody says something, it's just whatever it is that they're saying, and you perceive it in that way. So everything is seen as an impersonal phenomenon. Somebody's directing something towards you. It's like, okay, I see what that is, and you allow it to be there. You don't try to change anything. And it's just everything is okay. So there's a lot more equanimity about things. There's not any skin in the game. There's not like this idea that I have to do something or something needs to be done, or if I don't do this, this is what's going to happen. Stuff doesn't work out, no problem, no big deal. So that's some of the things that you could find that happen in your everyday life. But do you want me to be more specific about sensory perceptions or something else?
Yeah, sure. Sensory perceptions. Yeah.
So, for me, personally, I could say, my eyesight is pretty good already. So it's just that colors really pop, and you can like, if you need to find that needle in a haystack, quite literally, you can, because your ability to discern is really good. Same with hearing, same with any of the other sense bases.
How about time? Like, how do you perceive time?
Time does not exist in my experience. Time is like a mind-made concept. It's just a way to measure the distance between one so-called experience and another experience. That's it. Yeah, objectively, it's not like I've stopped objective time where I'm not aging or something like that. No, I wouldn't say that. The body is going through its own processes. It has its own body clock and whatever it might be. But time as a mental experience there's no time, you know. So it's like that's the absolute level. And then in the relative level, of course, I know I got to get up at this time so I could get to the airport at this time, and all of those other things are there. You know, these are just tasks to be done. But there's no like, oh, if I don't go somewhere on time, something's going to happen. There's been a couple of times where I've missed flights, and it's no big deal, right? Because yeah, whatever, that's just whatever it is. Or I've missed a deadline for something. Okay, no big deal. Or I missed an appointment, no problem. So relatively speaking, there's still that time. But in terms of my mental experience of time, it's a very persistent illusion for people. It's just there, you know, but it's nothing for me.
So my guess is that it feels better, right? Than
Oh,
before.
absolutely. You know, you met Methananda when you were at Dhamma last time, and Methananda and I were we were at the airport on our way to Boston. So we were at St. Louis at the airport, and I told him, and it was just a funny thing, but it was an interesting observation. If you think about samsara, right? Majority of samsara is waiting. And that's with the idea of time. It's like I'm waiting in line so that I can then get my ticket or my boarding pass. And then I'm waiting at the gate so I can get on the plane. Everywhere you go, you're waiting somewhere. Even when you put the food in the microwave, you're waiting for that food to get hot. So that sense of waiting, right? That's no longer there, like in my mind. Like waiting is another dimension of craving, because it's like, okay, I got to get from point A to point B. So I'm waiting in that process. Samsara, most of samsara is all about just waiting. You know, there's so much waiting going on. So when it comes to, you know, these kinds of things, because you're not bound by time or a concept of time, you could wait for as long as you have to wait, and you never get impatient. So there's no edge, you know, there's nothing like this edge of I have to do this, or, you know, if I don't get this on time, then I'm going to miss that. None of that. So it feels good. Definitely feels good.
Would you say this happened like, you know, at a specific times in practice, or like this dropped away, or it happened gradually?
It happens gradually until it just becomes your norm. It happens gradually until you just start to let go of so many things that it just becomes the norm. And then you look back and you review and you realize, wow, what a difference there is. There is a big difference.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Akarya.
Hello.
I could need a little more determination, so I wondered if you could share a little bit about the relationship between determination and relaxing. And
Yeah. So that is really the effort that you're making in meditation, is to find fine tuning that balance. It's to find that, you know, sweet spot between trying too hard and relaxing too much. Because if you have too much tranquility, chances are your concentration starts to diminish, and then you know, there's sloth and torpor, and you're no longer paying attention to the object of meditation. So if you find that generally the mind is low energy, or generally the experience that you have is low energy, then you know that then you need to have a little bit more effort. And that effort happens in the form of bringing in more concentration, bringing in more focus in whatever it is that you're doing. So in the case of the meditation, that is bringing up an interest. That's the interpretation that would be there of the experience of joy as a enlightenment factor. really enjoying the process of meditation, because if there's any level of distancing, any level of disengagement from the start, then the progress will not be there. There needs to be some level of enjoyment. There needs to be some level of interest, some level of engagement in the practice. If you have that, and with a little bit more effort, a little bit more attention, you have some level of concentration. And if you try too much, and if you push for that, then that's going to cause the restlessness. So you need to find, are you enjoying the process or not from the get-go? If you're not enjoying it, if it's dry, there's just this like sense of, I'm not going anywhere, then you know that, you need to bring up more focus. You need to bring up more interest. If at the opposite of the side of that, the other side of that, which is if the mind has a lot of engagement towards the object of meditation, there can be too much concentration, and that could result in a one-pointedness where, yes, it feels great in that moment. Yes, it feels great in that meditation. Yes, it feels great a couple of hours after that meditation, but the mind hasn't really evolved beyond that, because the whole point of this practice and this meditation is for hindrances to come up so you can deal with them as and when they come up using the 6 R's. So if your mindfulness is getting better, then you know you're on the right track by being able to notice much more quickly when a distraction happens. So these are some of the signposts of seeing where you are in your practice.
Mm. Okay, thank you.
I have another question, Delson.
Yes, please go ahead.
When I bring up the feeling of metta, at the beginning, that comes very easily, and it is, full of lovingness and gentleness and kindness, and it's sort of pure feeling, it's pure emotion in a sense, it's formless. But what I find is that once the meditation progresses, that tends to become like a bit more solid. It can become a bit more physical in a way. It can become a feeling of heat in the chest or like a ball somewhere. And the more that it becomes a kind of solid, the less feeling it has in it. So the lovingness and the gentleness gets kind of reduced. What's happening there? And is that because I'm trying too hard, or should I try to go back to the more feeling quality, or is it okay?
So what's happening is that's just another quality of joy coming up. If you feel heat arising, that is a sure sign of some kind of joy coming up. Even if it doesn't feel emotionally, qualitatively like joy, it's a sure signature of joy coming up. But if that happens and your mind starts to go there, then it's no longer on the feeling of metta. There is a difference between the feeling of metta and joy. Joy is much more vibrant, much more energetic. Whereas metta has a level of stability. Yes, there's a quality of happiness, there's a quality of positivity, there's a quality of upliftment there, but it would not overtake and solidify, because that solidifying is really that feeling of piti. That's happening. Just relax that, let that go, and switch your attention back to the feeling of metta rather than the physical components of whatever's coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I am not sure how to ask this. I feel like sometimes the object of meditation is a bit of a moving target, and especially because it seems like it opens into new things or things that I haven't been able to name before. So So I find myself, let's say, in a place where there's no thought and there's awareness and there's absolutely nothing going on. And then after 5 minutes of what's this, then the thought will go, there's nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing. Which is, and then it's just, that's okay, great. So then just stay there. But then from there, then, so that, that'll stay for say half an hour or whatever. And then it'll move on. And then the mind is not sure what the object is, like, where is my object? Like, what am I focusing on now? Especially then the next sit, I'll be, okay, so where's my nothingness?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure exactly how what I'm asking, but in other words, and then that could go off into like the playlist of all the songs, which interestingly seem to all be topical to whatever meditation I'm doing, like I'll what did I have? I had I forget, when I got into boundless space, it was like across the universe, and the
Oh,
songs
yeah.
just sort of play themselves. But there's a place where then I can see the consciousness is starting to get diffuse because it doesn't know where it should be focusing, kind of thing.
Yes. So one, I will just say, when you get that thought, like, okay, this is nothingness, that's just a perception. That's just the aspect of mind that's called perception that labels wherever the mind is. No big deal. But if that starts to generate or proliferate more thoughts, then you got to like 6R, relax. Generally speaking, equanimity is tethered to nothingness. So unless you're in quiet mind, you could then just do a little bit of radiating of equanimity, see how that goes, and then settle back into quiet mind.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to tack on to that.
Yeah.
Just when there seems to be background, because I'll find there are parts of the day it'll be very clear and focused, and then other parts of the day it'll be more diffuse and scattered and so on. And I think I recall in one of your talks you're talking about staring thoughts down or something, like when the hits keep playing and it's just getting a little out of hand. Could you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like what you're dealing with, especially with the music, is what they call earworm. It's just like it's just there, and you're constantly, it's just there, and you're not even thinking about it, and it's just there. So facing it in the sense of actually hearing the song and like paying attention to that song will actually uh, wiggle out that earworm, and you won't have to deal with it again. And that could happen with anything, really. Sometimes better to face it and just let it play through in reality, in terms of if it's a sound, or if it's something that you saw on TV, or whatever it is. Just let it play through, and then your mind will be satisfied and content with that, and then just let it go.
So you're actually at that point deciding to refocus from the object to let it say its piece and then go back to your object. Is that right?
Yeah, no, well, in the case of songs, for example, right, I would say you physically listen to the song, like go find the tune and listen to it. And so come out of your meditation, find the tune, listen to it. Okay, mind is okay with that now, and then come back to your sit.
This is the advantage of a home retreat, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think if you were in Dhammasukha, I don't know if that advice would fly with David, but we'll see. Anyone else? I guess everyone is content. Seems like it. Good. If there's nothing else, let's share some merit.
May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearlessly. May the grieving shed our grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisitions of all kinds of happiness. May being inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much, Charya. And thank you,
Thank you, everyone.
for joining.
Enjoy your meditation. I'll see you all tomorrow for your interviews. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.